On September 26, 1981, Royal Russell Long drove Charlotte Kinsey, Cinda Pallett, and their two boyfriends to this truck stop just off I-40. When they got here and there was no truck waiting, Long asked the boys to get out and wait while he went to check the next stop. The boys later told investigators they watched as the car drove away and the two girls waved out the back window. That was the last time Charlotte Kinsey and Cinda Pallett would ever be seen.
After the third or fourth day of the initial investigation after the girls disappeared, Royal Russell Long was removed as a person of interest.
But the focus of that investigation would come back to Long about 3 years later. By the time he again became the main suspect in the Kinsey and Pallett case, he was already serving a life sentence in a Wyoming prison for kidnapping and raping two young hitchhikers. One girl escaped, but Long took off with the 12-year-old Sharon Baldeagle, who was never seen again. Former prosecutor Ray Elliott had just begun his career as assistant district attorney in Oklahoma City when Charlotte Kinsey and Cinda Pallett disappeared. Little did he know that case would consume his life.
I literally lived, ate, breathed, and slept that case.
It was the second bodiless murder trial in Oklahoma history and captured the attention of people nationwide. Mike Gassaway defended Long in the 1985 trial.
There's a lot of tension because it appeared to me that the district attorney's office was taking this matter personally as opposed to professionally.
You can take a case both personally and professionally. As district attorney of this county, I take it personally anytime a character like Royal Russell Long comes into this county and kidnaps two of our young girls and then murders them.
The prosecution built a case with overwhelming evidence against Long, including the testimony of the two boys who identified him as the man who drove away with the girls, and the rental car with a trunk mat that had been painted.
So we luminoled this mat, and there came a perfect silhouette of two small bodies laying back to back on that mat, outlined in blood.
A long blonde hair was found stuck in the paint in the corner of that mat, and a large chunk of blonde hair was also found in Long's home in Wyoming. A forensic expert testified that those hairs were a match to Charlotte Kinsey. Investigators found that Long had been trained as a meat cutter when serving time years earlier in California. They even had a confession Long made to a fellow inmate in Wyoming.
He says to the inmate that was seated next to him that if you cut the bodies up small enough and put them in a rat hole, they'll never find them.
But Judge Charles Owens would not allow the inmate to testify. In fact, Judge Owens threw out several vital pieces to the prosecution's case, including the testimony of Long's own daughter, who said he had molested her many times.
She had witnessed him on numerous occasions try to entice young girls into the cab of his truck, either by the use of a live puppy or most often with stuffed animals, which again was clearly his MO in our case.
Judge Owens ruled that there was not enough evidence to send Long to trial.
If Royal Russell Long is in fact guilty as charged in this case, it would appear that law enforcement officials of the state of Oklahoma, quote, picked him before he was ripe.
At that point, I realized the case was over.
Elliott says Long remained confident throughout the trial and would taunt the family when he walked by, saying things like he was the only one who would ever know the real story, and telling prosecutors that he would not go down for this because the big boys owed him a favor.
In my opinion, he was referring to the FBI, and that somehow he felt in his mind that the big boys, being the FBI, owed him a favor in light of his informant activities, and that he was going to call in that favor.
As much as we hurt and gone through trying to find our daughters, to me it's pretty inhumane of anybody to sit back and say, well, I can prove your daughter's alive, and yet not provide any of it.
When Long walked out, they said he done it. But they, I mean, you could tell that that was the end of it.
In Oklahoma City, Jalah Gray, First News.